This is Augie Macro with Cryptid Creatures. Previously on Cryptid Creatures, we began our two-part exploration of the phenomenon of atmospheric beasts, living UFOs said to live natively in Earth's atmosphere. In this episode, we will conclude our investigation with more creatures, more accounts, and more word from host of Cryptids of the Corn podcast and writer of Living UFOs, The Ocean Above Our Heads, Justin England. Now back to the show.
We've got the speed, John. Glenn, 10, 9, 8,
Perhaps the strangest category of atmospheric beast is that of plasmoids, which are described as sentient orbs of light glowing bright and moving about as if they were alive. Some speculate that these are actually inorganic life forms made from a sort of plasma, making them truly alien life forms unlike any others on Earth. These sorts of lights in the sky make up a great majority of the total UFO sightings reported, with accounts going back thousands of years and being reported by thousands of people the world over. Notable accounts include stories of Foo Fighters, bright orbs that would chase and interact with fighter pilots in World War II and the Vietnam War like dolphins following a ship, before they would zoom off at ridiculous speeds in the opposite direction. Other famous accounts come from astronauts and cosmonauts, beginning with some of the earliest people in space. For instance, on his historic Friendship 7 mission in 1962, astronaut John Glenn reported sighting dozens of strange yellow-green lights floating outside of his Mercury 6 spacecraft, which he nicknamed Fireflies. Another report came from Russian cosmonauts aboard the Salyut 7 space station in July of 1984, who reported sighting on multiple occasions 7 giant, what they called angels, outside their craft, accompanied by a bright orange light.
There was one famous story, and that's in the book, of the cosmonaut angels, where the guy, they were never supposed to be alone. There's always supposed to be a team of 2 or 3, and they would change out every, 3 or 4 months. One thing happened where one of the guys had gone crazy, so a guy got left alone. And he's seen what he called an angel, but he described it as being this giant T-shaped glowing thing. And there's pictures, he drew pictures of it. And it would come, and he didn't radio about it because he's like, they're going to lock me up. They're going to think I'm crazy. He's like, in 4 days, another guy comes up. The minute he sees it, then that's different. And then the next day, there was like 3 of them, and he noticed that they were following the basically the curvature of the Earth with the sun, where they were kind of tracking. And what we call that is, for in the ocean, it would be vertical migrations, where they're following the sunlight because that's where the plankton goes.
Yeah.
So these deep sea animals don't want to be in the sun, but they want to be right at that edge. That's where the most food is available to them and not being burned up by the sun and not being exposed. So it's following that kind of pattern. The last day, I think there was like 50 or 60 of them. And then, the next guy comes up and he doesn't say anything to the guy. And he just is like watching him look out the window. And the guy starts flipping out. The new guy does. He's like, okay, I've been seeing them for like a week. I just make it. And then they radioed back. And then then the new rule was there always had to be 3 cosmonauts. NASA just admitted recently, and we're breaking down this plasmoid stuff, that they had stuff looking in the International Space Station that would freak astronauts out. I kid you not, everybody. I'll send you the link too, so everybody can read it, because it's in a 98-page document. Or they're like, some of the astronauts would complain about things looking inside the craft. They literally described what looked like an electric squid I kid you not, bugging our International Space Station, NASA. And, we've been talking about this for 5 or 6 years, and which is fine. I've been made fun of and all that. But now NASA's like, yeah, there's electric squids that harass the International Space Station every once in a while. All right, I guess I'm not crazy.
What about like Foo Fighters or
Yeah, so the Foo Fighters, perfect. I think that they were actually, some of those were organic. Where that's the same time in Vietnam where they were starting with the infrared and literally attacking things. So there were stories of, they weren't vampires, I'm forgetting the name for it. They're in Vietnam and a lot of that like Pan-Asia area. They had these stories of these monsters that would swoop down and eat people and would describe them as multi-headed, like flying demons, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
And if you hear some of the Vietnam vets talk about these creatures that they would see on the infrared, they called them demons too. And I kind of more coalesce that to them being such strange biology that's the closest thing. Like if you see some of the like deep sea cyanophores, they have a balloon and dragging tentacles and like that doesn't look like a living thing. More like a building or a compute. Like it. There's all these things, or there's actually.
It looks like some abstract glass sculpture more than a.
There's actually is it a barrel sponge? There is a type of marine invertebrate that uses crystals in its structure, and it looks like you said like a glass basket. It doesn't look like it. It's not a living thing. UFO,
Venus basket sponge.
Venus basket sponge. Thank you. No, so it's like Foo Fighters. I think some of these were organic creatures that they were fighting with. I think that some of those, I don't know if it's lasers isn't the best word for it, but I think some of them have like electromagnetic pulses. And at the time, in the 1960s and 70s, what would you call that if it could shoot a plane and shoot it out of the sky, right? And I think that's how they hunt each other. So if you
like directed energy or something?
Essentially.
What, electric eels and electric catfish, they have muscles in their bodies that produce electricity and they can direct it.
So the best example of directed electricity weapon in the animal kingdom is the electric stargazer, which is a football-shaped. I think they're cute, but a lot of people think they're ugly.
Yeah.
Which we just until 2016 did not know how they worked. Their organs are in their eyes, and they can actually stare at it. So they called them the men that stared at goats because they would stare at fish and then the fish would just die. They can actually correctly direct electrical pulses through the salt water. We still are very on the edge of we don't know how they do it. We don't know how they do it. So electric eels, why they look blind, they're also putting out a lot more electricity than these guys are. Electric eels putting out enough to kill a caiman. So it's not anything. But why electric eels look blind is that they have to seal themselves when they release. So those little white spots are the pores that open up to release electricity. Like you were saying, all their organs, their buttholes on their chin. Electric eels, all their organs are in that first like 20% of their body. The rest of their body is just electrical producing organ. But if they have their mouth open when they're doing that, they'll kill themselves. They are not electrical proof. Like they have to be insulated. And that's how they fight for territory and for like all that is they kind of nudge each other and hope the other one will open its mouth so they can electrocute it. So yes, it's like that. And then there's like pistol shrimp. Everybody don't know it's a little shrimp that can clasp its pistol, its arm, its claw, and it'll shoot a superheated jet of water, cooking clams alive.
Yeah, they have this hinge mechanism in their pincer, and whenever they release it, it moves fast enough. It goes faster than the speed of sound
underwater.
Of water, right?
Yeah.
Because the speed of sound changes depending on what substance it is. So it's faster than the water's speed of sound, which is significantly faster than the speed of sound in air. And it's so fast that it produces a pressure bubble, right, where it like displaces the water behind the pincers so much that it makes a little air pocket, and then it closes in on itself. It makes a sonic boom, and then it kills the thing.
So describe that 100 years ago.
Yeah.
And that's magic, right?
Yeah.
This little shrimp, this tiny little shrimp, points, clicks, and then the clam opens up and it's cooked. Like, what do you call that? Like, so I think some of these Foo Fighters, these energy weapons they were seeing, from these craft, or something like that, some biological process that we just don't know yet. You know, whether it's electrical pulses or maybe even electromagnetic pulses of some kind.
If they have some sort of metal in their body, they could produce an electromagnetic field. And like the human nervous system produces a weak electromagnetic field.
Everything does. Everything alive does.
Yeah. So you could just have enough of it and then be able to point it.
So that's why, like, we were just talking about this today. Faulty wiring in houses can cause anxiety. In humans is because of that. It messes with you. You're an electrical being. And faulty old wiring in houses can make you feel like you're being watched, everything like that, because it's messing with your electromagnetic field. And you're like,
if we can, ghosts, it's probably the same thing. That's probably why people get antsy whenever they're in a haunted house or in a place that, like, they say it is a bad energy. It's because whatever spirits are roaming around there, the field that they put off, it messes with your own.
Yeah, 100%. It's that feeling, yeah.
Yeah.
So I think some of the Foo Fighters were shooting at these guys. I think they killed a lot of them too, and I just don't think they realized it.
Finally, there is what is called star jelly, which is a phenomenon of anomalous, translucent, jelly-like organic material floating in or falling from the sky, usually believed to be the remains of dead or dying atmospheric beasts, which have fallen to the surface. Notable accounts include a rash of reports by residents of Oakville, Washington State in 1994, who reported high volumes of gelatinous rain. Reports by villagers of Kivalina, Alaska in 2010, who reported the village and the nearby coastline being covered in strange orange goo filled with millions of unidentified microscopic eggs. And a report by a group of police officers in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania in 1950, which we investigated in the Grand Tour, the Cryptids, Creatures, and Curiosities of the Keystone State.
In the town of Phoenixville in Chester County, if you're a sci-fi nerd like me, be sure to visit the Colonial Theatre, one of the more iconic film locations from an equally iconic 50s B-movie.
Here we are in front of the Colonial Theatre in the town of Phoenixville, Pennsylvania, where in 1958, one of the more famous scenes from the sci-fi B-movie The Blob was filmed. Though The Blob is a work of science fiction, its story is based on a supposedly real event that happened in Philadelphia on the night of September 26, 1950. On that night, 4 Philadelphia police officers reported seeing a 6-foot-wide, dome-shaped object that emitted a purple bioluminescent glow. They described it as being able to float under its own power, and they believed that it was an alien entity. Eventually, one of the officers reached out to touch the object, which caused it to melt into a puddle onto the ground and eventually evaporate away completely. The next day, the sighting was reported to the Philadelphia Inquirer, and the creature was from then on known as the Philadelphia Purple Glob. Years later, the story inspired the 1958 science fiction B-movie, The Blob. Will we ever be able to fully understand the mystery of this strange creature? We may never know.
Why don't we find their carcasses? Well, they're falling from the upper atmosphere. I think we are getting their carcasses. I just think they're shredding on the way down.
Yeah. They're depressurizing or burning up, depending on how high up they are.
Any of it. I mean, we have hundreds of star jelly events, though, here in the U.S. in the last 100 years, where people are like, I mean, the famous one's the Kentucky meat shower, where everybody was eating it. There's still chunks of this meat. And now they say it's vultures, hundreds of vultures throwing it up over this farmhouse. Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's, I guess, not more believable than anything else, but where there was the one account, and I'm trying to remember, I think it was either Washington or New York, where, and this one's in the book, it fell over a town, it killed a bunch of pets, the jelly did, and it hospitalized a girl. But the jelly melted. The only reason they could prove it is the mom had put a piece of it in the freezer. If anybody's ever messed with jellyfish, so like I used to cast net for bait in Florida. If you get them, they just fall apart. I used to raise salamanders. If a salamander dies, they disintegrate within 12 hours. Like, did nothing. So more basal animals will break down incredibly fast. So these star jelly events have that common thread where within normally 2 hours, there's nothing left. But this girl had gone into toxic shock, and it seemed like she'd been hit with a neurotoxin. It was very, very similar to like a jellyfish thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I thought is, it may have been one of these jellyfish had fell apart. Because like a dozen dogs had died from eating this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And she had just touched it, turned around, looked at her mom, and fell. And then so that's.
I mean, if you're trying to hunt things that are like 40 feet long or something, the neurotoxin's got to be really potent to be able to do something.
If you look at, and that's a perfect example. So if you look at slow predators and tiny predators have the strongest venom. So blue ring octopus, because they're killing animals that can just destroy them if they have to fight.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why a blue ring octopus can kill like 200 men, even though they're hunting crabs just a little bit bigger than themselves, because they have to be able to bite the crab and it just die.
Mm-hmm.
And like you were saying, jellyfish, why their venom is so potent is that they're so soft-bodied that when something runs into them, they just have to die right now, or you're going to rip me apart, essentially. So like you were saying, if there's 600-foot animals hunting something that's 40 feet long, it has to hit that net, essentially, and just die.
Well, I mean, and also, just the proportions of these things are so much larger. Because, like, if it's a 40-foot long animal or something, that neurotoxin won't be nearly as effective to that as it would be to, like, a 5-foot tall human. Right,
100%.
that has so much less stuff there to counter it. Right.
Gosh, yeah. So the moral of that story is don't touch it.
Yeah.
And then there was like the eggs.
Get gloves.
The eggs in Alaska is another one we talk about, where it rained billions and billions of bright orange eggs over this tiny village in Alaska. Like everything was covered in eggs, and we kind of think it was a sky orgy, and they were just happened to be over top of them.
It was a spawning.
That's what, because they were all over the river, and I think they just, the extra eggs. Like you look at, like you said, spawning salmon, 1% of 1% of their eggs ever make it to adulthood. But I mean, like when we were fishing for salmon, you literally have to step on salmon nests to get to salmon to fish because they're producing so much more egg because they know the survival, it's that survival strategy of just make a billion babies and hope.
Another related phenomenon is the meat shower, an example of which being the infamous Kentucky meat shower of Bath County, Kentucky, on March 3rd, 1879, when the entire town was rained upon by pieces of unidentified meat between 2 and 5 inches in diameter. Experts at the time had no idea what to make of it. Some speculating that it was caused by a mass gathering of vultures who over the town regurgitated meat all at once. And others speculated they were masses of atmospheric bacteria. Locals even tried the meat themselves, describing it as tasting like lamb, bear, horse, or even human. Several samples were sent to the Smithsonian to be examined, but they could not identify what sort of animal it came from. Now, some speculate that the meat was the result of the death of a giant atmospheric beast that had died and been shredded during its fall to Earth. Other related phenomena include blood rain, raining fish, raining frogs, and raining worms, which have all been reported many times across history and mythology, and all potentially being related to atmospheric beasts expelling unwanted material while feeding.
In India, it's rained blood in this town several times, and they've actually tested it.
Yeah.
And it's dozens of species blood. So the movie Nope, which we had our second episode out before they released the first trailer. Nope, I 100% think is government disclosure. If you look at and I tell everybody this, look at the credits. They had funding from the U.S. government, specifically the military. And the main person was a marine biologist consultant for the animal's behavior, for Jean Jacquet's behavior. So Jean Jacquet, for anybody that knows, is based off a cuttlefish. All that behaviors that Jean Jacquet does and everything's a cuttlefish. But Jean Jacquet has a raining blood event over the house. So what is happening, and I've talked about this, where animals that live in the upper atmosphere have to really pick weight distributions, right? So the throwing up the bones, the non high level nutritious items that weigh a lot. I think some of the raining blood events could be them literally squeezing the food, getting the non nutritious liquid out, and keeping the pulp.
Mm-hmm.
So if you look like in India, like I said, they've actually been able to collect this several times. And most of the time it's never mammal blood, but it's a lot of small animals' blood, invertebrates and that kind of stuff. And then there's some reptiles and stuff like that.
Raining frogs, like, Exodus stuff, or raining fish or things like that, where like the thing is intact as it's falling or as it lands to the ground. Why frogs? Something like that. Like, how would you explain raining frogs?
I think
because it's not just Exodus like that happens.
No, all the time.
It
just happened in Texas, I believe, within this decade. I think that's skim feeding. I think they're more going for like algae and scum and stuff like that. The frogs are not probably the part they want. I think they're probably trying to break down much simpler organisms because it's that cost reward kind of style. Where yes, there's a lot of protein in a boned animal of vertebrates, but for them to digest it, it's going to take a lot longer, and there's a chance, depending on how their gut works, that it could rot before they digest it.
Yeah, because if it's such a large animal and it's like cold-blooded, it could take months for stuff to go through that.
So they want the single-celled or the simple-celled organisms. So if they're skimming like these little frog ponds to get the algae and that kind of stuff, they're taking what they want, and then they're regurgitating the rest. If you look at, you've already mentioned whales a bunch. Baleen whales catch things all the time they're not trying to eat. There's a really funny video from 2025 of a sea lion getting thrown up by a big humpback. The humpback opens his mouth and the sea lion comes flying out. He didn't want the sea lion.
Yeah.
He just was scooping up the bait ball, and he's like, "Oh, there's somebody big." And they do it with sharks. You see it with sharks and dolphins and that kind of stuff all the time. And then baleen whales always let him go. There was that guy that got eaten by a baleen whale when he was lobster diving, and it had him in his mouth, and then it let him go. I think it's more that kind of style where they're going for much smaller organisms. They're skimming, they're taking what they want, and then owl pelleting the rest up.
Yeah.
And frogs, they're probably fine. These fish, I mean, how many raining fish events do we get where the fish are still flopping?
Yeah.
And it could be a filtering mechanism in the front of their mouth or anything that the size, like a size filter. And then they don't want it sitting in the front as they're flying. And before they go up, they just spit all that stuff back out.
Yeah.
And that's how you get all the, I mean, there's been raining eels in England for centuries, millennias. Raining fish here in the U.S. I mean, it happens where people walk up, and I'm not talking, for everybody that know, like walking catfish, American eels will actually crawl into land to get to other bodies of water at night. And then sometimes they'll do it like a mile. So you can see an eel or a walking catfish, which is invasive in the U.S., really far away from any body of water. They do that. I'm talking like there was a video of a trout, literally like trout in a parking lot from the sky. Like trout, if you look at them wrong, they die. And there's just a bunch of them flopping in a Walmart parking lot somewhere. But yeah, so that's kind of where I think some of that is. That could also be the U.S. government. We drop everything from planes. We actually have trout dropping planes. You know that, right?
Yeah. Restock.
Yeah, that's how they restock and plant isolated lakes.
Is there any truth to these stories? Could any of these fantastical creatures be real? We may never know. The convergent evolution concept definitely makes sense, but it doesn't explain where the original creatures came from. Like, what did they all evolve from that started out in the atmosphere?
So very basal animals, or even like you were just saying, fungal animals, where it's before the big split-offs.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's where I would kind of put them at. Because when I talk about jellyfish and manta rays in the book, that's body shapes. I don't think they're actual jellyfish or they're actual manta rays, but that's the rough, the convergent evolution. The animal is shaped like a manta ray. The animal is shaped like a jellyfish.
Yeah.
Which jellyfish are ancient. One of the most ancient fossils we have of complex life, and they're incredibly intelligent, resilient. Everything from the immortal jellyfish to medusas I mean, we have one jellyfish that we think could be 40,000 years old.
Hmm.
And it's just, it's the size of your thumbnail.
Yeah.
And you just look at this thing and like it. So I think everything from volcanic eruptions to, and then we talk about updrafts in the book, could be a big, detritus updrafts where these giant columns of air. So for here in the U.S., we're a really good country for this, and I think that's maybe why we have a lot more than a lot of other country sightings. For people that don't know, we have a lot of tornadoes here in the U.S. Most of the world, tornadoes are rare, but we have these two giant mountain ranges and this giant flat plateau in between them that is just the perfect mixing ground for tornadoes. But what it also does is creates this giant blanket of air moving across. When it hits Appalachia, it shoots up like an elevator and goes back up. So we live in what's called the troposphere, and it takes you up to the stratosphere. So most storms never, ever leave the troposphere. They scrape at the edge of the stratosphere, but they never cross that boundary. And then we talked about the NASA studies. That was a big one in there for like even just getting into people didn't think there was life. And that like the first NASA study was right when we started researching this, when that came out, where it was talking about, they were expecting to find 14-ish species of anything. And they found, 10,000. And they think there was much more because they were eating each other in the collection disc. So, we have basal, and the traps are tiny. So we're not, they weren't trying to catch bird-sized or bigger animals.
Yeah, it's like dumping a bucket in the ocean and just seeing what you can catch, you know?
Yeah, yep. Like the spoon looking for sharks.
Yeah.
But I mean, it was a good sign, and the NASA stopped doing that in 2020 or 2019, and it moved to a private. And then the links is in the book for that. I like to put the links and everything to find this information. I don't like to hide anything.
Yeah.
There's all the links are in the back too. But where they find these things, where there's dozens, every biological non-vertebrate clade had a representative in the upper atmosphere. So that means there is a jellyfish cousin up there. An actual jellyfish cousin we have found and documented in the upper atmosphere. When we started going to the moon, that's a whole topic on itself, but sometimes they would report green film on the outside of the shuttle for just a second. And we now think that those are actual clouds of upper atmospheric algae, which would make sense. So when we were taught in school, the higher you go up, the colder it gets, right? You see it in movies and everything, like Superman, the one just came out and he freezes as he's going up. That's only true for a certain level. And there's a diagram in the book because I like doing diagrams because it's just easy to understand. But when you're growing up in the troposphere, yes, it does get colder. Once you cross the ozone layer, it sits right on top of the stratosphere and the troposphere boundary. It gets warm again, where the stratosphere meets the mesosphere it's like 30 miles wide. It's like 50 degrees, and it's full of water. It's literally the biggest reservoir of water on the planet. Is 30, 40 to 50 miles above your head. And you can't see it with the naked eye, and especially these things are partially translucent. There's an ocean above our heads that we can't even begin to start researching. Like the Hestrodendes they sent up were just the tip of, and then we found thousands of species. And life abhors a vacuum. I mean, we have things, we've talked about ironclad snails. They live in 1,200 degree water. They eat sulfuric metals. There's life will find a way to survive in any of these environments. And we had this thought that the radiation belts, so for anybody to know, the ozone layer protects us from some of the solar radiations we get. So we had an idea in biology for a long time that anything above that layer of the ozone, which is too irradiated, right? It's just not going to survive. And yeah, that's true for most terrestrial life because that's how we've adapted, we've evolved. But we have plenty of terrestrial life that, like tardigrades are a perfect example. There's plenty of species of tardigrade that just do not care. And then there's plenty of species that don't get cancer. I mean, jellyfish are a perfect example. They're kind of all a stem cell, right? Jellyfish are incredibly simple and complex. Most species have 26 eyes and no brain. Jellyfish can navigate mazes, and we have not figured out how. We don't really understand how they are processing this information and dealing with it. And they are drifters, right? They can't do a lot. A big wave is going to still throw them against rocks. But for like, there's some species of like upside down jellyfish and mangrove
Mhm.
jellyfish that literally go through mangrove roots and don't touch any of them. That's for an animal that doesn't have a brain. That's some hard work. Atmospheric plankton
Mhm.
is crazy because it's brand new and there's already countries harvesting it. So
Harvesting it?
yeah, Dubai has these basically like these base wind sails they float up there to harvest it. And they found it burns really well. So there's talking about it for a fuel source. So there's an environment we know nothing about that people are already talking about turning it into a fuel source.
Obviously.
So our deepest ocean right now, that we know, our deepest spot's about 7.5 miles. And it's
Mm.
not very wide at that point. It's a trench, but still full of all kinds of complex life.
Mhm.
The thickness of this ocean is like 30 miles,
Mhm.
right? So it's 3 times as thick, but it's a belt.
Yeah.
And it's just, man, like, it is so much more water than on the surface. Like you were saying, the surface of the earth is 70% ish water.
Yeah.
We live on 30% of the surface. And then there's all that water. There's more of it above us than there is below sea level,
Yeah.
which is insane. And we know nothing about any of these environments. And it's because it's just very hard to study that. Balloons, I mean, don't last very long in this because they just expand. It's very hard to put enough gas in a balloon to get it up there to keep it from popping. Some Mylar balloons will do it. We've talked about fishing for one of these things, like doing a Kickstarter to basically buy like a 15 or 16 mile balloon, put some glowing LEDs on it with a big fishing hook and see if we can catch one of these things. The first film of a live giant squid was done by that.
Mhm.
A Japanese scientist had made a bioluminescent lure and he dropped it where he's like, I think giant squid live here. I
Mhm.
think they hunt bioluminescent organisms. I make it a lure. And he put it on the front of a sub and it was like an hour in, attacked the front of the sub
Mhm.
and left. And, he was crying and I think the guy's like 70 because he's like, it
Yeah.
worked. So I think you could do something similar
Yeah.
and then put a big hook on it and just sit there and reel it in. Planes don't ever leave. Commercial planes do not ever leave our layer of the atmosphere. So for everybody's like talking, like thinking, well, why don't we see them in planes and stuff? You're still 20 miles at the highest. You're in a commercial plane. You are still 20 miles below these guys. You are closer to the surface of the earth than you are to these guys by double. Like it's nuts. And I think people really have a hard time rationalizing the scale we're talking about.
Yeah.
And that's a big thing is why can't we see it? Why can't we see him if there's if there was a humpback whale up there, you couldn't see it.
Yeah.
The
I
only
mean,
reason
you can barely see a plane, and the plane is like at
6
least
miles.
100. It's at least 100 feet long, and it's only a few miles up.
Yeah.
And you can barely see it.
Yeah, and it's not partially transparent.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I think a lot of people have that. That's a big one we hear a lot. So that's how I kind of answer that question is it's triple the distance and partially transparent.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care how big they are. You're not going to see them. But I think you see them at night. There's one guy's called the Midwest Skywatchers. And I think they have a migration route that they have filmed for the last 10 years. So they're a very nice couple. Check them out. They do like sky cameras for UFOs and stuff like that in their property. And most of the time you're just watching farm animals. Every once in a while you see something cool in the sky. But the first week of September, every year for the last 10 years, they have hundreds in one night going from all angles from the south to the north, meeting in one spot and then all going north together. And it looks like the walleye migration map.
Mm-hmm.
It looks like an oceanic migration species where they're meeting up at a choke point and then traveling together. And you just watch all these glowing lights. They're not planes. They're not satellites. They're coming from all over and they're meeting and then they're going together someplace.
Mm-hmm.
You can watch these videos. Like they have these videos available. I think it's September, either the last week of August, first week of September. They're in Indiana. So we're going to try to go out there this year, I believe, and sit and watch it in person.
Okay.
And they have a jellyfish like thing on camera too. But that's I keep my they have like a dozen really, really cool videos. But they're filming 24/7, 20 different cameras over a huge property every day.
Crop circles. Because
Oh yeah, that's an interesting tied into this phenomena, which is not in this first book, but it is in the second book. where I kind of theorize, not all crop circles. Once again, this whole subject, we're talking about a slip of the UFO a finite piece of the UFO subject. I say that because we've been attacked by some of the UFO community because they don't hear that part.
Yeah.
I'm not saying you were abducted by a jellyfish. I'm saying that some UFOs are jellyfish.
Yeah.
But with crop circles, do you know what a white spotted pufferfish is?
Yes.
A white spotted pufferfish is about 5 to 6 inches long. The males make, here's how intricate their nest designs are, their mating display designs are. Most scientists, archaeologists, biologists thought it was too complex for any other animal besides human to make.
Mm-hmm.
And they thought the designs were language. Okay, I want to put that out there. They thought these designs were language. So this 6-inch pufferfish makes up to 100-foot wide circle sand design that he maintains for up to 3 weeks at a time. And so he'll collect even gold dust and put into the ridges of it to make it shine.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why we didn't know pufferfish were doing this is because how they used to is they'd swim up and see it, and the pufferfish would leave.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's a 6-inch pufferfish, and you're a human.
Mm-hmm.
You're a predator as far as it knows. So why they do this is the females will swim from well high above, and they'll look at several males' designs from a distance, and whatever male, it's a show of dedication. It's a show of health. The bigger the design, the more complex, the healthier the animal, the more devoted the animal is. That's the best genetics. Mm. I think some of these crop circles, once again, not all of them, are this. I think that they are mating displays for some of these things because if you look at them, people talk about this. Crop circles don't look like they're made for us. Mm-hmm. Because you can't see them unless you're in a plane, right, or a helicopter. Yeah. So why, if an alien or one of these, it's an interdimensional being or whatever, why would they make that if you can't see it normally? Mm-hmm. And I think some of it is that these are giant mating displays for these creatures. I think they make them because you can see them from real high up. Some of them are huge and intricate. These quote unquote languages that people have spent decades trying to decipher. Once again, they thought the pufferfish, the lines in the sand were language. And is that human? So I just forgot the word. Basically putting human ideas and thoughts onto an animal or to a thing that we don't understand. Or it just may be doing it because it's intricate and it's hard to do.
Yeah. Not
that it has a language purpose. So if you look at so I think some of these guys are radioactive because they live above the ozone. Mm. I think they're fine. I think they're it's just they live in a more radioactive environment, so they're biologically more radioactive. So if you look at crop circles, they have a radioactive element to them. Then we're not talking crazy amounts, like dangerous amounts, but they're 5 or 6 times background radiation. I've worked with Geiger counters on the Ohio River missions and stuff like that, and we've had hundreds of times background radiation. So it's not like it's impossible to run into that, but it seems like they're coming in contact with something radioactive for a short period of time. And it seems like they're steamed or heated. So I kind of wonder if it's tentacles, hot like tentacles, rubbing these things down and making these intricate shapes. That's one thought. And it's designs. And then they sit, maybe a mile or above their design, waiting to see if any female giant, jellyfish or whatever come by. And so pterosaurs did this. Krakens, which is a extinct, not the real, like the modern kraken. There's an extinct group of cuttlefish that we've kind of colloquially nicknamed krakens from the Jurassic. Where they did this. They actually had mosasaur bones. For anybody to know, they're monitor lizard cousins. There's giant sea monsters. So these creatures would take their bones and decorate these giant nests.
That's amazing. I did not know about that.
So we don't have any fossils of the cuttlefish. We just have their nest. And they're identical to modern day cuttlefish, except they're made with mosasaur bones, not pieces of coral. So we don't actually know how big these things were. We're just imagining how large, As cuttlefish, the only thing in them that can fossilize is their beak and their cuttle bone, but the cuttle bone breaks down really quick. But yeah. So I think it's something like that, where it's this giant grand display. And I think a lot of them are fake. I'm not afraid to say that. Jay, a co-host, he's a big crop circle guy. I think like 80% of crop circles are fake.
Yeah.
And I do think there's like that 20% that have enough strangeness, like the root, like they're bent, they're not broken.
Yeah.
You know, they're very intricate. You know, there is, but I like you can look at some of them and they look like me and you. I went out and did it.
Yeah.
Right. Not saying it's bad. It's just you can tell that it's broken. There's corn. You know, me and you are walking out there, even with the board. Like the guys that said they did it in the bar in the UK, they claim they did like 30 or 40 of them a year. But when they were on camera to redo it, they were never nearly as good.
Yeah.
And they were never as intricate.
Yeah.
And they said they were rusty. How are you rusty if you're doing 30 or 40 of these a year?
Yeah. You should. That's actually more practice than just about anyone else.
So yeah, there's all kinds of stuff to look for that. But yeah, so I think some crop circles are mating displays.
Mm-hmm.
Or even it could be signs, language, and a simplified way of letting, or food sources, marking of territories, that kind of thing, because they don't have anything up there they can touch.
Mm-hmm.
So humans make these nice big canvases for them.
What is your favorite historical account?
Ooh, my favorite historical account. But there was one from, I think it was Patagonia, and it was the miners. And the whole story had like 3 parts where this group of miners had seen one come out. They were coming out of the mine. They were on their lunch. And they looked up, and over the edge of the mountain was a manta ray, one of the manta rays. And it was like a deep gray. And for us later on, we think that it may have been sick already because it seemed like it was not translucent. It was almost milky in color.
Mm-hmm.
And they did what anybody would do is they got all their guns and started shooting at the thing. And they shot it a lot and it died. It crashed. And funny enough, about 17 miles away was a Smithsonian outpost. So they called the Smithsonian. They came and collected the body. And the guys were waiting for it to be in the paper, waiting for it to be in the paper, waiting for it to be in the paper. Never was. They talked to the Smithsonian outpost and said they never turned in anything. The only reason the story ever got anywhere is one of the miners had cut the end of the tent or the end of the wing off. He kept it in a box and showed everybody in town. So that's probably because it was describing a giant gelatinous manta ray, and I think it's like 1908, 1911, something like that, like real early 20th century. Mm-hmm. So like I said, we have some in the book from like the 1700s. That one had so much detail. And the only reason that the guy was believing because he took it into a bar, and everybody was like, it was like a mix between steak and a jellyfish. It wasn't quite jellyfish soft, but it was meat, but it wasn't like a steak. It was somewhere halfway between each thing. Or yeah, you could probably push your hand all the way through it. But if anybody's ever messed with jellyfish, which you shouldn't, but you can just squish them like they're nothing. Yeah. Because they're like 98% water. There was one from like the 1760s. We just did an episode on. It was called The Night of the Dragons. Where it was supposed to be the last migration of the dragons. And they look like our sky snakes and our manta rays. And hundreds of villages reported them. So how it would work then is a lot of times the town pastor would have a book of events in the city, would have a date, and for a lot of reasons, good, bad, and different, whoever, the pastor, the priest, whatever, would be like the only, normally, besides wealthy, the only ones that could read and write. So they would keep like town logs of everything. So there's one night through northern Russia where it was said every 100 years there'd be a massive dragon migration, and this was the last one. Where thousands of these things, thousands, and they were flying over the towns at night and not stopping, not doing anything, and people they would draw on these dragons and stuff like that, and they really they always put like reptile heads on them. Yeah, but some of them were like Chinese dragon looking things, where they're just basically a big snake like body with a big reptile head. The other ones are these manta rays, so they look almost like cobras, but because they would stick a reptile head on it. Yeah. And one thing we talk about is in a lot of like medieval art, Not everything is representative of what it looked like. Some things
Yeah.
are added to explain things. So like feathers were put on things that showed they could fly.
Yeah.
Like some early bats were drawn with feathers. And then there were shells, like they put snail shells on stuff, and it wasn't because they were had a snail shell, it's because their backs were armored or whatever. So there's some like dragons, which were probably crocodiles, showing like they would have a snail shell on their back because you couldn't take a sword and whack at their back. And
Yeah.
like scoots. So that's probably those two are probably my favorite historical accounts.
Well, I never thought of that before, but you say that they referred to them specifically as dragons.
I think some
So-
dragons is these things. The only thing I would tell everybody is keep your eyes up at the sky. If you see something, please, like I said, email us at livingufos@gmail.com, or you can do cryptozoological@gmail.com. Any photos, any your stories, anything like that, please send them in to us, because I tell you from doing this, what we found out is people felt like they were crazy, more so than even normal for seeing a UFO or anything like that, because it had tentacles, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, so it helps, and it helps other people feel better. We've had several people pick up the book at festivals and stuff like that and been like, I seen this. Like, I seen one. I didn't know that this was a thing. Like, I didn't know, every UFO is drawn is metal disc, That's all I'd say is please share your stories and keep an eye out for these things.
Tell me about Cryptids of the Corn podcast.
I like to say we're magical and scientific thinking combined. Man, that's bad. I was a biologist. Jay is the conspiratorialist. We like to mix in a lot of the science with the paranormal, because I don't think there's not that big of a difference. The only real difference between magic and science is understanding, writing it down. Like herbal medicines and stuff like that, we talk about a lot because they work. You just may not know why they work, as in the chemical reactions or whatever that are taking place. But you mix X and X, it'll cure headaches or whatever. So we like to do that. We bring it, like, we talk everything from particle accelerators. We've had some of those guys on talking about the phenomena around those. We've had evolutionary biologists come on and talk about cryptids and cocaine. One Pagan, if you're listening, shout out to you. Love that guy. But yeah, so check us out. You can find us anywhere. Just type in Cryptids of Corn Podcasts. It's cryptidcorn.com. You go to any platform. We are celebrating. We just crossed 2.5 million downloads.
Oh, that's cool.
It's a stupid big number. We never thought we'd get anywhere close to this. Like our first year and a half, we had 300 downloads total. I mean, total. We were paying people to listen to the show.
Yeah.
And we've been blessed by a lot of help, and a lot of big shows have helped us grow to this. So we thank everybody for listening and supporting.
If you were to give advice to an up-and-coming cryptid researcher or a paranormal investigator or someone that's interested in the subject, what advice would you give?
Don't be scared to research your theories on a topic. Like Bigfoot's a big one. Me and Jay will kind of walk down the middle. I've seen a Bigfoot. I was 17. So I was your age, which is crazy to me because that's like half my life ago now.
Mm-hmm.
But I was fully in the flesh and blood camp. But now we've had mine didn't have any paranormal aspects to it, but we had so many people that I believe on our show that've had the paranormal side of Sasquatch. Bigfoot's a big hot button one because it's like you either are full flesh and blood or you're like full woo. Like it's interdimensional portals. And I think it's probably, the phenomena is probably somewhere in the middle where it has aspects of both, because I personally believe there's credible people on both sides. But I only am confident in what I've seen, but I'm never going to tell somebody they didn't see what they say they saw. So don't be afraid to go down your own rabbit holes. Like I've been attacked over this subject by some of the UFO community for nothing. I'm not saying all UFOs are this. Like in the book, like it says really towards the beginning, like 5 to 10% of UFO sightings are probably this. The small, subset. And if you go on to like MUFON or any UFO like researching organization, you just type in tentacles. That's kind of how we started doing like the heavier research and seeing the percentages of, UFOs. So just don't be scared to research your thoughts and theories. If you think they're fake, look into the fake. If you think they're demons, they're demons, don't get stuck in your ideas. Don't be afraid to change and grow and adapt, because my thoughts 5 years ago when we started this podcast are not the same that I have right now. And that's how you're supposed to work. You're supposed to research and grow and develop. And yeah, hopefully that's some kind of coherent sentence.
Thank you for the interview. That was really fun.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I think that's it.
From one like-minded, curly-haired man to another.
Are there really atmospheric beasts out there? Is it possible that these strange and fantastic beings, along with an entire ecosystem untouched by man, exist in the skies over our heads? How probable are these speculations regarding the potential for atmospheric fauna? And will science ever fully unravel the mystery of these beasts above the clouds? We may never know. Thanks for watching. And to watch our previous and future episodes, visit the Cryptid Creatures YouTube channel. Like, subscribe, and tell your friends. Cryptid Creatures is brought to you by the Kitty Petters Union, Cobble Sound Recording Company, and my dad's show, Meet the Pressers. This is Cryptid Creatures with Augie Macro, signing off.